I betrayed my husband recently, and the weight of my actions is crushing me with overwhelming remorse. It happened just 2 days ago, and I immediately felt deep regret. It stands as the gravest mistake of my life, and I'm still struggling to come to terms with it. Let me provide some context. I'm 37 years old, and my husband is 38. We've been married for 15 years and have 2 children, a 14-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. While my husband is the primary breadwinner, I work full-time and contribute financially. We see ourselves as equal partners in life, so the weight of my betrayal weighs heavily on me. I fear I won't be able to endure another day without succumbing to despair. Without going into too much detail, I'll say that I work at a facility dedicated to helping recovering addicts reintegrate into society. We encounter people from all walks of life, from homeless individuals to those of substantial wealth. My colleagues and I often discuss how addiction knows no social boundaries. It can affect anyone, regardless of their status. It was at my workplace where I encountered the individual. I found myself caught up in something I hesitate to call an affair because, truth be told, it wasn't about emotions or any deep connection. It was more of a spur-of-the-moment thing, kind of like being caught up in a moment's whirlwind. This person, a guy who used to be a patient at the place I work, had wrapped up his time with us just over 3 months back. He's a 28-year-old with a pretty cushy life, thanks to his well-off parents who foot most of his bills. By night, he's the guy checking IDs at the door, and by day, he's behind the wheel driving around. Despite his jobs, it's his parents' support that fills most of his wallet. There's something about him, maybe it's the confidence he carries from bouncing at clubs, or that rough around the edges charm, that drew me in. It's not like me at all to fall for someone like that, but there I was, doing things I'd normally never even think of. For anyone reading this and jumping to conclusions, let me set the record straight. I'm not a therapist or a counselor. I don't have anything to do with treating patients where I work. My job is all about the behind the scenes, the paperwork, and the admin stuff. So no lines were crossed professionally. This guy, from the get-go, had a way about him. He was all charm and smooth talk from the moment he stepped into our office. I've seen my share of flirty patients, usually just harmless chatter, especially from the older crowd. But with him, it felt different. It was like he meant every word, and he didn't let up. It was unsettling but, I'll admit, also kind of flattering. Once his treatment was done, that should have been it. But then, out of the blue, he popped back into my life last week. We ran into each other at the gas station. He was on his motorcycle, looking much healthier and more polished than before. He was polite, acknowledging his past behavior and apologizing. Seeing this transformed side of him touched me, putting me at ease during our conversation. After talking for a while, he asked for my phone number, saying it was to stay in touch. I hesitantly gave it to him, knowing I probably shouldn't have. He assured me that he enjoyed our conversations, but deep down, I suspected he wanted something more. Earlier this week, we met at his apartment, and things became intimate. I regretted it instantly. I had a dental appointment scheduled for 2:30 that day and decided to take the rest of the afternoon off since my dentist is conveniently close to my home. I didn't want to make the 25-minute drive back to the office, only to turn around and drive 25 minutes back home after my appointment. Despite knowing it was wrong, I agreed to visit his new apartment and see his furniture. Once I arrived, things escalated quickly. I was fully aware of the wrongdoing but pushed forward. I found myself completely engrossed, almost hypnotized by the buildup. However, the moment of action brought a sobering realization, and I was filled with regret as soon as it was over. I left and made it clear that I never intended for this to happen and that I couldn't continue seeing him. He questioned our friendship, to which I responded that we never had a friendship, we had nothing. On my way back home, I stopped by the city park to use the restroom and clean up. The park facilities provided flush toilets and running water, and I spent over 30 minutes there attempting to wash away the overwhelming guilt and shame. While doing so, I began to contemplate the gravity of my actions and the potential consequences. I realized that I could have become pregnant or even contracted an incurable sexually transmitted diseases, which sent me into a state of panic. Leaving the park, I headed straight to the pharmacy, where I purchased the over-the-counter Plan B kit. The young pharmacist on duty was incredibly helpful, discreetly guiding me through the process. I'm grateful for her assistance, although I can't express my gratitude publicly. Sitting in the parking lot, I took the pill and then called the guy to discuss his health status and relationship history. He began by apologizing before confirming that he presently had no sexually transmitted diseases. I inquired about the last time he had been tested, and he mentioned it had been over 5 years ago. I pressed further, asking if he had other sexual partners since then. He admitted to having had multiple partners, though he couldn't provide an exact count but estimated it to be more than 5. His revelation shocked me, and I couldn't help but burst into tears. He went on to explain that he believed he had used protection with his previous partners but wasn't entirely certain due to his past pill use. When I asked why he hadn't used protection with me, he simply stated that it was because I hadn't requested it. Hearing this, I abruptly ended the call and blocked his number. Then, I sat in my car, overcome with tears. Upon arriving home, I swiftly changed my clothes, tossing them into the washer, and proceeded to prepare dinner for my family. They were expected back around 7, as my daughter had a game, and my husband and son planned to attend. As we sat down to dinner, I struggled to maintain my composure. Each time our eyes met, an overwhelming sense of guilt washed over me, threatening to bring tears. Last night followed a similar pattern, though my emotions were even more heightened. My son noticed my distress and inquired if I was crying. I replied with a denial, attributing my watery eyes to the pollen in the air. I barely managed to navigate the past 2 nights, and I fear I won't make it through another without breaking down. Initially, I contemplated burying this whole ordeal and resuming life as if nothing happened. However, I've come to understand that I cannot maintain my sanity by taking that route. On the other hand, if I were to confess to my husband, our seemingly perfect relationship would forever change, and my children would likely lose all respect for me. I'm seeking advice from those who may have faced a similar situation, as I'm uncertain about the best course of action and the potential consequences. It's Friday evening, and our kids are at the movies with their friends. I mustered the courage to confess to my husband. The emotions overwhelmed me, and tears flowed uncontrollably. Surprisingly, my husband's response differed from what I had anticipated. While I knew my actions had left him heartbroken and devastated, he remained stoic, displaying very little emotion. Immediately after my confession, he rose from his seat and walked to the window, gazing outside for a prolonged moment. I kept apologizing and urging him to express his feelings, but he remained silent. When he eventually turned to face me, his first question was whether protection had been used. It was with great sorrow that I had to admit we had not taken precautions. He responded with a disapproving shake of his head. I tried to reassure him, explaining that I had undergone testing but had not received the results yet. In a composed manner, he informed me that I would need to relocate to the spare room and maintain a safe distance for everyone's well-being. I consented and continued to express my remorse, yet he did not engage with my words. Instead, he suggested that we inform our children that I had tested positive for the virus and needed to quarantine for a few days. After sharing this, he turned and headed down the hallway toward our master bedroom. I trailed behind, urging him to open up and share his feelings with me. With a calm but stern demeanor, he declined, expressing his desire to be alone with his thoughts. I pressed for a reason, and he simply gazed at me, shook his head, and shut the door, returning to the living room. I spent the following 2 hours weeping on the sofa, pondering how to set things right. I tidied up just before our kids returned home around 10 p.m. Upon their arrival, my husband emerged from the bedroom to welcome them, and the 4 of us engaged in conversation. They excitedly recounted the movie they had seen and where they had gone for a meal. My husband appeared to be in good spirits and asked our kids numerous questions about the movie. Eventually, he informed them, "Your mom has something to tell you." I glanced at him, and he nodded. I proceeded to disclose that I had tested positive for the virus but was asymptomatic. I explained that for everyone's safety, I would be sleeping in the guest room for a few days and maintaining a physical distance from everyone. The kids appeared to be fine with this and inquired about the required distance. My husband informed them it should be 6 feet. We proceeded to spend the remainder of the evening watching TV until past midnight when we retired to our respective bedrooms. It felt like an ordinary night, and I was starting to feel more optimistic. However, my mood took a swift turn the next morning around 5 a.m. I heard my husband in the kitchen, prompting me to get up and join him. He sat at the table, sipping his coffee, absent-mindedly tapping his finger and staring ahead. Upon entering the room, he didn't acknowledge my presence. I greeted him with a good morning and gently touched his neck, but received no response. I went ahead to pour myself a cup of coffee and joined him at the table, inquiring about his thoughts. His response was a distant look and then an averted gaze. When I asked if he was willing to talk, he conveyed that there was nothing to discuss, emphasizing his need to think. He further explained that when we were with our children, we should both maintain a facade of normalcy, but when alone, he preferred I refrain from speaking until he was ready to engage in conversation. I assured him of my understanding and readiness to listen whenever he felt prepared to talk. Though I consented to respect his need for space, his uncommunicative and emotionless response is causing me significant concern. Moreover, I'm left wondering about the nature of his thoughts that we cannot discuss openly. His reaction is quite unexpected and is leaving me deeply apprehensive. Has anyone else encountered such a response from their partner after betrayal? I want to express my gratitude to everyone who responded to my previous update. Based on your feedback, I've respected my husband's request for space to process everything. I've refrained from speaking to him unless he initiated the conversation or when it concerned our children. Things were progressing reasonably well, and then yesterday, it appeared we had a significant breakthrough. It happened to be my son's 13th birthday, and he wished to celebrate at an amusement park. The four of us had an enjoyable time. My husband and I took turns partnering with our kids on various rides, including all the roller coasters, some of them multiple times. Toward the end of the day, my husband and I even went on rides together and had a great time. It felt reminiscent of our initial days together. We all dined at my son's favorite restaurant, enjoying a wonderful dinner and surprising him with an ice cream cake. It was an exceptional day. This morning, I woke up with the impression that we were moving in a positive direction, looking forward to building on the wonderful day we had experienced yesterday. As I headed to the kitchen, my husband was already there, and he actually greeted me with a good morning. I poured myself a cup of coffee and refilled his while sitting down next to him. We discussed yesterday and how enjoyable it had been. After a few minutes, he changed the topic and mentioned it was time for me to be honest with the kids and my parents about my actions. Hearing him say this sent a shock through me, and I felt a pit in my stomach. I inquired why he felt that way, and he explained that they deserved to know the truth. I suggested keeping it between us and working through it together, but he expressed that he didn't want to bear the burden of my actions any longer. I shared how awful I felt, struggling to sleep and concentrate since the incident. He acknowledged my feelings but insisted that I needed to tell them today. He added that if I didn't, he would be disappointed and might have to disclose it himself. I asked if he would accompany me for support and to demonstrate our unity, but he declined, stating that this was something I had to face alone. His decision deeply hurt me as I had expected him to stand by my side for support. I've spent the past few hours contemplating how to address my kids and parents. I drafted several scripts, but they didn't feel genuine. Ultimately, I decided to be straightforward and confess my actions, admit they were wrong, express my sincere apologies, and request their forgiveness. I can do at this point is to face the consequences of my actions regarding the test results. I received them, and I'm in the clear. This was a significant relief. However, the clinic advised a retest in 30 days as a precaution due to the proximity of the initial test to the potential exposure. Although this concerned me, the clinic mentioned they have never encountered a positive result on a retest. I will provide an update after discussing this with my family. I am grateful to those of you who have been praying for us, and I kindly ask for your continued thoughts and prayers. I've returned to inform everyone that I've confessed. I shared the complete truth with my children and later with my parents, and it was an incredibly challenging process. My children reacted differently to the news. While both were shocked, my daughter responded with anger, whereas my son expressed deep concern. My daughter even demanded to know the guy's identity to seek revenge, but I refused to disclose it, assuring her I'd never see him again. Both children are very worried about their father and have united in support of him, making it clear they stand by his side. My parents' reaction was one of profound disappointment and shock. They, too, have rallied around my husband and have only spoken to me once by phone since I told them. In the meantime, they've conversed with my husband at least half a dozen times. I'm pleased they're all supporting him during this time, as he's a wonderful man who deserves it. As for my husband, he expressed gratitude for my honesty and for taking complete responsibility. Nevertheless, his treatment of me remains unchanged. I'm uncertain about our future path for the time being. I'll strive to be the best wife and mother I can be. I take pleasure in performing small acts of kindness for my family, particularly in the kitchen through cooking and baking. Our mealtimes have become precious moments for family bonding, and I hold them dear. I appreciate all the support I've received from those who have stood by me during this challenging journey. As I mentioned in my previous update, I had opened up to my entire family, hoping that my husband and I could begin the journey toward healing our relationship. However, things took an unexpected turn 2 Saturdays ago when my husband sat me down and expressed his desire for a divorce. He conveyed that despite his efforts to move beyond my actions, he found it impossible to do so. He revealed that since learning about my transgressions, he had been under constant mental strain, which had now begun to manifest as a serious impact on his physical well-being. He disclosed that earlier in the week, he had visited the doctor, and his blood pressure had reached dangerously high levels, resulting in the need for medication. I felt deep concern and regret for the pain and suffering I had caused him. Furthermore, I was heartened by the fact that he hadn't confided in me about his health struggles until that moment. It became evident to me at that juncture that his trust in me had been shattered, and our marriage had come to an end. Tears streamed down my face as I assured him that I would comply with whatever he decided, as I couldn't bear to inflict any more pain upon him than I already had. He expressed his desire for an amicable divorce, emphasizing the importance of fairness and prioritizing our children. I assured him of my commitment to that, yet at the same time, I made it clear that I would persist in my efforts to salvage our marriage. His response was a warm smile, and I moved closer to embrace him tightly. Over the past few weeks, we've been diligently sorting out the logistical aspects and sharing the news with our families. We broke the news to our kids, and while their initial reaction included tears and directed frustration at me for disrupting our family, my husband and I engaged in heartfelt conversations that eventually eased their concerns. By the end of our discussions, we all shared comforting embraces, navigating through the emotional journey together. However, our parents have had a different response. Both sets of parents are deeply upset and fervently advocate for us to remain together. Our mothers, in particular, have been urging my husband to reconsider and explore therapy as a potential solution. Regrettably, he firmly declined, asserting that he bears no culpability and does not require therapy. The situation escalated to the point where I needed to step in and request that they respect our space and allow us to address this matter independently. This is our current situation, and it may not be the desired outcome, but perhaps it aligns with what I deserve. What's intriguing is that since we mutually agreed to divorce, we've engaged in more profound and thoughtful conversations than we have in quite some time. Furthermore, my husband has become more open, relaxed, and has taken the initiative in most of our recent discussions. It may sound unconventional, but I believe that divorcing might paradoxically be the catalyst that ultimately brings us closer together. Strangely enough, the notion of divorce has seemingly liberated my husband. Perhaps he feels he's regaining something I took from him through my actions lately. He appears to be consistently in good spirits, and his blood pressure has returned to a healthy range to the extent that his doctor suggested a gradual reduction in his medication. Hearing this news brought me immense relief. Label me as eccentric, but that's the observation I've made. While I would prefer to stay married, if going through with the divorce enhances my chances of reconciling with him, I'm willing to accept it. I'm cautious not to set my hopes too high just yet, but I'm fervently praying each day that somehow this situation works out positively for us. Our divorce was officially concluded last week in our state. The process moves swiftly if both parties have reached an agreement before the hearing. Our hearing took place in just under 5 months, and all matters were resolved on that day. I had wished for the process to extend further, allowing me more time to try to change my husband's mind, but circumstances led otherwise. Currently, we are all still residing in our family home and intend to do so for a few more months until the end of the school year. Beyond that point, we plan to list the house for sale, and it is likely to sell quickly. This upcoming period will be challenging for me, and I hope it doesn't come to that. Ideally, I'd like us to continue living together until my son completes high school, but we shall see. Throughout the divorce proceedings, all our assets were equitably divided. I received a modest child support payment and 2 years of alimony, which will take effect once we sell the house and part ways. I'm optimistic that this might serve as an additional incentive for my husband to prolong our family's coexistence, though the ultimate decision rests with him. As mentioned in my previous update, our current relationship is harmonious, and we're getting along exceptionally well. It's as if we're still in a marital bond, except for the missing intimacy, which I deeply long for. We maintain a strong friendship and are excellent parents to our children.
The four of us regularly share meals and engage in various family activities, but my husband and I no longer have private moments together. I continue to question why he was in such a rush to finalize our divorce while showing no urgency in breaking up our family. If anyone out there can shed light on this, I'd be eager to hear your perspective. For now, I'm taking life one day at a time, striving to be the best ex-wife and co-parent I can possibly be. With any luck, my former husband may come to value this effort and consider giving our relationship another chance down the road. All right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in. I've recently discovered that my wife is having an affair, and I'm feeling quite perplexed about how to proceed. Our journey together spans almost a decade, with 5 years of marriage, and we are blessed with 2 lovely daughters aged 5 and 7. I have a substantial income, a 6-bedroom house with a backyard and swing set, and I provide for my wife's mother and 15-year-old sister who have been living with us for over 2 years. Over the past few years, our relationship has encountered numerous challenges, and it was slowly deteriorating. I convinced my wife to attend marriage counseling with me, and we've been attending sessions nearly every week since April. We both weren't content, and counseling shed light on our harmful behaviors. I committed myself to becoming a better husband and father, believing my wife was doing the same. However, in October, during a business trip, a friend tipped me off that my wife was spending a significant amount of time with a specific guy. I had briefly met this individual in the past with the impression that he was a friend of my wife's friends. Without revealing my suspicions, I promptly returned home that night. When my wife picked me up from the airport, she appeared distant and unenthusiastic about my return. Upon arriving home, she went straight to bed. I stayed awake for a while, and once she was asleep, I discreetly examined her phone. It's worth noting that when a spouse starts keeping their phone with them at all times, even during sleep or showers, it often indicates secrecy. I discovered the guy's name and accessed the text messages, which she had deleted. A brief check of the cell phone records revealed she was exchanging over 20 text messages with him daily. I woke her up and confronted her about this, but she denied any wrongdoing, claiming they were just friends, and she deleted the messages to avoid any misunderstanding on my part. My suspicions grew day by day, leading me to closely monitor her cell phone records. It became overwhelming, and I eventually insisted that she cease all communication with him. I even had a civil discussion with the guy at his home, requesting that he respectfully stop talking to my wife, to which he agreed. However, my wife began to harbor resentment towards me, feeling I had interfered with what she considered a perfectly innocent friendship. I noticed a sudden increase in her data usage due to Facebook messaging. She clung to her phone even more tightly and continuously denied any communication with him. My paranoia grew, but I decided to put it aside and concentrate on becoming a better husband and father. I began listening more attentively, assisting more with the kids, actively participating in their daily activities, and reducing my stress about financial matters and minor issues. I took on household responsibilities like doing my own and the kids' laundry to contribute. Additionally, I made efforts to engage in her interests and passions, particularly her love for horses. I had previously bought her a horse, and I helped her search for a job in the equine industry to encourage her self-worth and social interaction. Today is January 15th, and we're out for a grand dinner to celebrate her brother's birthday. The gathering includes her cousins and friends, and we enjoy a delightful meal. After dinner, most of the group, including my wife, heads to the nearby bar. I hang back in the restaurant with one of her cousins when the manager approaches me, holding her phone and inquiring if I recognize it. To my surprise, it's my wife's phone, and I open her Facebook app to discover a series of messages between her and someone else. She expresses deep affection for this person, conveying how much she loves and misses him. She mentions missing his scent on her jacket and refers to him as her one and only. As I read further, the messages become increasingly distressing, and I can't bear to continue. Her cousin reads them as well and shares my shock. Confronting her, I learned that she had developed feelings for this person but maintains that they never engaged in intimate activity, insisting they only kissed on 2 occasions. While I personally believe they didn't have closeness, I choose not to disclose this to her. She confesses that her involvement with him was a result of feeling neglected by me over the years. This revelation shatters my world, leaving me feeling betrayed, enraged, and foolish all at once. I don't desire a divorce, yet I also can't fathom remaining married to someone who no longer loves me. She expresses a desire to work through our issues, but I remain uncertain about my own desires. I sense that she yearns to find her own identity and prove her independence from me. Despite my love for her and the difficulty I have being angry, I believe that she may only truly appreciate what she has by facing the possibility of losing it, or at least some of it. My dilemma is whether to proceed. What course of action should I take? I consulted with a lawyer, which was a valuable conversation. While staying with a friend, the lawyer emphasized that I should return home to avoid potential issues related to abandonment, which my state recognizes as a concern. So, I'm back home and currently residing in the basement. The lawyer also assessed my evidence and suggested I have a strong case to prove her adultery. Consequently, this may exempt me from paying alimony, though child support remains obligatory, as it should. Importantly, he cautioned against any sexual involvement with her, as doing so might imply condoning the affair, jeopardizing my stance on her adultery. Interestingly, he mentioned that he advises his female clients in a similar situation to engage sexually with their husbands if they've been cheated on. I've taken steps to safeguard my assets. This includes opening a new checking account solely in my name and redirecting my direct deposit to this account. I've also canceled all our joint credit cards and implemented credit monitoring with fraud protection. Regarding her mother and sister, I consulted with a real estate agent last week, and I plan to list the house for sale next month. I've made it clear to them that they will need to find alternative housing arrangements after the house is sold. On another note, my wife has found a job working for her uncle's moving company. Although it doesn't pay much, hopefully, this experience will help her appreciate the value of a hard day's work. I believe her reaction stemmed from my decision to stop covering the costs of her horse boarding and upkeep. Additionally, when I canceled her gas card, it was due to the expenses associated with her Lexus X470, which was quite costly to fill up, especially with the kids in mind. I'm doing my best to shield them from the fallout. I ensure there's no arguing or conflict in their presence, and I take good care of them. 8 months later, I've made significant progress during this time. I've experienced a roller coaster of emotions with highs and lows. I battled severe depression and found myself in a dark place. Getting out of bed and going to work was a struggle, and often I couldn't bring myself to do it. I've been dealing with a lot of pain and anger, and that's an ongoing process. Initially, my instinct was to retaliate and make her face the consequences of her actions. We agreed on a monthly child support amount, which exceeded the legal requirement. I believed it was the right thing to do at the time. My lawyer prepared the settlement agreement outlining what she could expect from me every month. She found a rental house about 45 minutes away from the city. It seemed like a suitable place for our daughters to live with excellent schools in the vicinity. I understood that she couldn't afford a similar place closer to town, so I thought it was a good choice. Part of our agreement stipulated that a non-relative of the opposite sex couldn't spend the night while the children were present. She isn't allowed to have her boyfriend stay over when the kids are present, and the same rule applies to me: no overnight guests of the opposite sex while the kids are with me. Interestingly, this provision in the settlement agreement is quite common and aligns with our state's regulations. However, in the first week of her moving into our new place, before we could finalize the settlement agreement, she had her boyfriend spending several nights a week. To make matters worse, she attempted to have the kids lie about it to me, which greatly upset me. In response, I had my lawyer withdraw the settlement offer and informed her that the new arrangement meant I would provide her with nothing beyond the child support mandated by the state, not a penny more. It took her some time to realize the gravity of the situation, and now she's struggling to make ends meet. Don't get me wrong, the kids are well taken care of. I always ensure they have everything they need: food, clothing, toys, and more, but I handle the expenses directly, bypassing her. She still hasn't found a job, and while she claims to be searching, to be honest, I'm not concerned anymore. It's her problem to deal with now, not mine. I've made a positive change in my life by embracing CrossFit, completely transforming myself in the process. I'm now in the best shape of my life, feeling fantastic, and filled with confidence. As for my personal life, I've met an amazing new woman, and I believe I'm drawn to her because she's the complete opposite of my ex. She's intelligent, highly accomplished, attractive, driven, and we share a great rapport. I want to clarify that I'm not rushing into another relationship. I made that clear right from the beginning, and she fully understands our situation and is comfortable with it. Meeting this new person marked a significant turning point for me. I now have a companion to talk to, spend time with, provide comfort, and share intimacy with. It boosted my spirits and transformed my overall mood, leading me towards happiness once again. Since then, things have only improved. I managed to let go of much of the anger I harbored towards my ex. Surprisingly, my ex and I have developed a good relationship now. We communicate regularly and always prioritize our children. I may never forgive her for what she did to me, but she's the mother of my kids, so it's in everyone's best interest for us to get along. No, we won't reconcile. I can never trust her again. However, we can be friends and coexist. Some things will always be hard to move past, and the individual she cheated with is one of those things. As I've told her, I'll never accept him or even acknowledge his existence. It would be best, especially for him, if I never crossed paths with him again.